to break barriers that might empower them and enable them to reach the next level of attendance and finances so that they can see their dreams come to pass. Before we get started in the systems and the programs themselves, I'd like to take just a few moments to introduce myself more directly. I am not only serving in these roles, but I have a background of pastoral ministry as well as itinerant ministry. I've served in 3 pastoral roles. My very first pastorate was in an area in the Central Valley of California in which the area around the church that was almost 75 years old had so changed demographically that instead of being a white middle-class community, it was a very socially diverse community and ethnically diverse, crime-ridden, a lot of challenges in that community. And so the police department had renamed the area around the church Hell's 40 Acres. So my very first pastorate was a pastorate in Hell's 40 Acres, a church that had fallen down to about 35 people, 75 years old, and not been really honestly given much hope for survival. Through some of the processes that we teach through Positioning Your Church and some of the things that I had learned in my research project for this methodology, we were able to lead that church from 35 to over 400 in about 3.5 years. My second pastorate was a church planting experience. It gave us the opportunity to find out if the Positioning Your Church methodology and processes would be effective not only in restoring and rehabilitating and turning around an existing church that was declining and struggling to exist, but also if those principles would flesh out in a new church model. We began that work in 1984, December of 1984, and 9.5 years later, the church had grown to over 1,250 in attendance, and we had also planted 4 daughter churches. Each of those daughter churches were at least 300 in attendance, and each of them had acquired property on their own. That gave us the indication that not only were these principles effective because I was using them, but now they were transferable to other people and they could use them as well. When those first 2 experiences began to take place, immediately what happened is people began to call us and ask us, can you tell us what we should do in our situation, teach at seminars and conferences, and began consulting work literally a little over 25 years ago. My current pastoral role, I am currently a pastor in Oklahoma City, was a church that was very traumatized. It had been a congregation of over 2,000 at one time that had gone through 2 pastoral ministries that ended in moral failure and the breakdown of the marriage between those 2 pastors. So they had back-to-back leadership challenges. It was also experienced the fact that it had a Christian school with over 400 students, and the pastor just prior to me, 2 weeks before the Christian school was going to open its fall semester, decided that the church could no longer underwrite the school and cover the cost, and so they closed the school thinking they were going to save money, but instead faced a significant lawsuit from all the teachers who provided a class action lawsuit for breach of contract. And all the students and all the parents connected to the school obviously left the church angry, and so the church just toppled down more. In addition to that, there had been a well-known speaker that had come through the church prior to my arrival that was preaching on healing, prayed for a particular lady. She fell to the floor. Some people believe that's called falling out in the Spirit or being blessed by the Lord, whatever the terminology. Most people just thought the Lord was just touching her in a very special way. But the people who knew her challenged that and questioned whether or not maybe something else was wrong. They tried to offer her assistance and check on her, but each time the speaker rebuked them and told them to leave her alone. They tried that 3 times to no avail. Finally, they called the paramedics. The paramedics came in, put her on a gurney, rushed her to the hospital, and she died 2 days later. And the lawsuit alleged against the church was that she died for not being treated in a timely manner. So when I became the pastor of this church that was at one time 2,000 and had fallen down to 300 people, I usually got one of 3 responses. Either, oh, you're the pastor of that church where those 2 preachers messed up, you're the pastor of that church where they closed that school 2 weeks before school was going to open, or you're the pastor of that church where that evangelist killed that lady in the altar. None of which are a very good way to start trying to rebuild a church, trust me. And it even gives altar calls a bad name in our church. But by taking the same principles that we had used in our first 2 pastorates and applied them to this church now 19 years later, our church is back up near 2,000 again, and we planted 10 daughter churches as well. So today we've written a book, we do consulting services, seminars, we lead capital campaigns, and we're actually involved in regional and district consulting for groups of churches, for denominational or just regional groups of churches that want to come together. Positioning your church is a model that really works with lots of different kinds of churches. I could go into a better list than what you see on the screen today, but just to kind of highlight a few of those, we work with declining churches, churches that are declining in attendance and or finances over at least a 3 or more year period of time. We help them stop the decline, or bleeding as we often refer to it as, and then help them regain growth again back in their churches. We take plateau churches, which are churches that just kind of hang around a attendance range of about 3 or 4% over several years. Maybe it was a church of 100 3 years ago and it's still a church of 100. Maybe it was a church of 500, or even a church of 1,000 3 years ago and it's still a church of 1,000, and they're trying to get to the next level. We help them assess where they are as a ministry and write a strategic plan and give them strategic solutions to be able to break that plateau. We also help barrier churches, and barrier churches are churches that are healthy, but every time they have a surge in growth, within a few months they go right back to the same size. Like Easter, maybe a church that was 300, had an insurgency of 50 or 100 people, and they kept them for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, but after about 8 weeks or so, that all of a sudden they go right back to that 300 again. That's a barrier church. It's healthy, it has all the ingredients to be a growing church, but they keep hitting an invisible ceiling, and we help them identify what that ceiling is and how to work around it. We help growing churches. Some people say, why does a growing church need a consultant? Because instead of being reactive to growth, we try to help them be proactive to growth. Instead of waiting until they're full and they're starting to lose people, we help them anticipate what the next level of growth is going to look like and how to build their infrastructure and their ministry and their leadership to get ready for that next level, so when they break that barrier, they're not caught off guard or reacting to it, they're ready for it. And then, of course, we help with new churches, because that's very dear to my heart, not only in personal church planning myself, but also in helping dozens of other churches get started. Most new churches fail within the first 5 years after getting started, and the reason why they do is because they just don't understand the infrastructure and the ingredients necessary to not only survive the 5 years, but also be able to sustain growth beyond the 5-year period of time. When we work with churches through Positioning Your Church, we actually combine a number of resources together. It starts with, if a church calls us in and says, we want to take on this Positioning Your Church relationship with you, the first thing we do is we create a history for the church. We ask the church to give us responses to certain questions. We create what we call a baseline of ministry. Much like if you go to see a doctor and before he sees you, he wants to know the history of your family so he can anticipate maybe some of the things that he needs to consider in his evaluation process. We then arrange for an on-site assessment where we actually come to your church and come to your campus and spend a period of time there interviewing any members or staff members, some of the community people, your pastor and his spouse, leadership teams, and we're getting our eyes on your campus and on your facility and on your community so we can make a first-hand assessment. That's different than a lot of other assessment tools. A lot of times you can order an assessment tool, take a survey, send it in, they'll evaluate, score it, send it back to you, but nobody's ever been on your campus as a consultant. They're not giving you the human element, and we provide that in our services. We create a customized survey, and instead of just being a one-size-fits-all survey, we actually take some of the core components that are important to us for every church, but we also work with you on customizing areas that you feel like you would like to get feedback on. Maybe you're wanting to get better feedback about your youth ministry or your children's ministry or some other area of your church. We'll customize that survey to meet your questions and be able to give you an evaluation point as well. Those churches that like us to do video assessments, they video record their ministries, their children's church, youth services, worship experiences, and we take those and evaluate them and just give them a feedback on, hey, you're doing great here, nothing to worry about here, or, there's a few things you probably should pay attention to. We provide a demographic report that gives you the latest trends of what's happening in your community, what their needs and expectations are. We write a strategic plan that is a one-year strategic plan, things that we recommend. Keeping in mind, we never violate a doctrine or a style of ministry. We work with all denominations, whether they're Baptists, Episcopalians, Anglicans, Pentecostals, non-denominational. We don't go in to change the style or the belief system of the church. We're working on what we call systems and structures, because the skeletal pieces and the core factors of most ministries operate pretty much the same, and it's usually in those details that churches are struggling. We give you a recommendation. Again, they're non-binding. You don't have to do anything we say, but we're going to give you insights and justification as why we would recommend certain action be taken. And we believe that if you take that action, you can get to the next level, stop the trends that you're on, and get better results for your future. Included in our services is a one-year coaching service. This gives us the opportunity to talk with the pastor or a designated group each month and provide email support, conversation. So as you're working through the course during the year, we're available to help you assess, analyze, make different diagnoses, change strategies, whatever we need to do, come up with creative ideas to help you break those barriers and get to the next level. We actually have kind of created what we call a church health or a church growth cycle. And so as a part of that, the first thing we do is the assessment piece, much of which I've already described for you. And we take all that assessment, all the demographic reports, and we begin to create that preliminary report out of that. From there, we help you with training. If you want us to come in for additional visits, we can discuss that for a fee, but primarily we can do training by DVD, we can do training by video conferencing. We can help you conquer some of those areas that may be struggling in your ministry. We have a strategic plan that I mentioned a moment ago that kind of gives you step-by-step things to do this first month, second month, third month, so that we can lead you on an incremental progression of effectiveness to see your church move forward. We focus heavy on intentionality, meaning that if you take the report and all the assessments and you put it on a shelf and say, well, in 2012 or 2013, we did this assessment with this guy named Terry Bates, and he had some really good ideas, but you don't do anything with it, then nothing's going to happen. As a part of our role, it's to help you get intentional with the implementation of those ideas and to take away the question marks. Maybe you don't know how to do certain components, and we'll give you the resources and the ideas and the suggestions and the help to implement and with intentionality. And then the fifth component is that coaching network, where we stay connected to you for that year. Some churches ask us to renew every year, and we stay on their team, much like a staff member for a small fee. We stay on retainer, and we coach those churches for multiple years. I have some churches now that I've been coaching for over 20 years. They keep me on a retainer. I come in once each year, do some additional training, help them with their staff meetings or with their leadership teams, do additional work of training and development, strategizing, getting them to the next level. So it's a consideration that you may want. Some churches take us for 1 year. They break that barrier until they get stuck again, then they call us back in and say, okay, we want to go again. So whatever works for you, whatever is best to assist your ministry. I mentioned to you that we work significantly on the theme of intentionality. Luke chapter 13, verses 6 through 9 tells a powerful story of intentionality, and we call it the 1 year that can make a difference. In that parable, Jesus spoke about a certain man that had a fig tree that planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it, and he didn't find any. He said to the keeper of his vineyard, look, I've come here for 3 years looking for fruit on this tree, but there's none here, so let's just cut that tree down. It's just taking up space in the ground and robbing nutrients from the other trees. But the caregiver of the vineyard said, wait, don't cut it down yet. Give me 1 year. Let me dig around it. Let me fertilize it. Let me give it special care and attention. I call it, let me get more intentional. And if it bears fruit, then it'll stay. If it doesn't bear fruit, then we'll cut it down. That's why we call it the 1 year that makes a difference. We have no record in Scripture anywhere that that tree was ever cut down, indicating 1 year truly can make a difference in any ministry. That's what we want to do to help you and your church break barriers and be able to go to the next level. To do that, we kind of give you an orientation on how we view positioning your church. I believe a copy of my book is available there at the seminar if you'd like to purchase one. But it's about helping you understand the nature of our systems and how to understand positioning a church for health and growth. We use 3 kinds of evaluation. One is called statistical evaluation. It's where we're looking at, much like a doctor would draw blood work and maybe urine samples, those kinds of things to look for what's going on with your blood levels, your cholesterol, all those kinds of things, sugar levels. We have a process that evaluates the healthiness of a church in its current state. We look at stewardship effectiveness. Are you maxing out what you already have? And then we look at strategic evaluation, which determines what simple things could we do to expand the capacity leadership-wise or facility-wise or financial-wise that would allow the church to go to the next level. We also focus on environments. Now, this is not the same thing that we call in society, secular world, environmentalists, but we've discovered that there are environments connected to a church that often hinder a church from growing to that next level. We identify those and then help a church to overcome them. the best way I can describe this for you real quickly is imagine walking into a room where there's a group of people standing, but everybody just kind of goes silent when you walk in the room. And there's tension in the air. And you didn't see an argument and you didn't hear an argument, but you can tell by the thickness in the air and the attitude of the people that there was an argument in that room prior to you walking in. Well, the same thing happens. People walk into churches and they sense things that maybe are going on that you may not even be aware of. And so we help you learn how to identify those 7 areas and how to rectify them or modify them so when people come in, they feel like it's a healthy environment that they want to be a part of. We thirdly look at infrastructure. There are 10 areas of life and organization that we find critical to the success of any ministry. And so what we want to do is focus in on those 10 areas, take your church ministry and even the ministries within the church, if you want us to, and help assess what areas are operating at their optimum capacity and what areas do we need to improve on. These range from vision to the way a pastor leads a church to a leadership team to its volunteers to its finances, its facilities. I mean, the whole spectrum. There's 10 critical areas that we talk about. As a result of all of that, we create what we call a master plan. And this master plan is a goal to help you achieve greater results during the year that you've signed up for positioning your church. Over and over again, we have testimonials of great success and great impact of helping churches break those barriers, stop the decline, get off the plateau, prepare for new growth, raise all those elements to a greater level of effectiveness, resulting in greater impact for ministry. And really, overall, when you consider our service fees, they're really a very small investment. But for a small investment, I mean, you don't have to hire a full-time staff member to do this. You don't have to hire a full-time employee to do this. But we could come in as a consultant, do the visit. By the way, when the fee that we quote includes all of our travel expenses, all the survey printing, everything and processing, the demographic reports, everything is included in our service fee. But we can help that church from decline or maybe start a turnaround process, help that plateau church gain momentum or get a new or a growing church to break barriers and to get to the next level. Our fees are based on the size of your church. The larger the church, the more surveys, the more processing, the more demographic reports, the more interviews, all of that has to take place. And so we're a flat fee. We do it based on a service provided for churches under this scale. So imagine that you're a church under 250 and you've been struggling to break the 100 barrier. Or maybe you've been stuck at 150 and you're trying to figure out how can we get to that next level. Maybe you have Easter Sunday and then you go back to the same size. For a $3,000 investment, we can give you the strategies and the skills to be able to break that barrier so you don't stay with that same level of frustration. Or if you're a church of 250 to 500 or a church over 500, the fees are respective to those sizes. And just imagine, you know, what if you don't do this? What if you don't get some help? What if you don't engage a service like this? Then if your church stays the same for another year and doesn't grow, how many dollars are you losing in your ministry because you don't have the new people coming in? How many dollars are you losing because you don't have the new growth? Or how many people are you losing because they're frustrated that your ministry is not going to the next level? So you can not only keep people from leaving, you can also be ready for new people to become a part of your ministry and grow for a very, very small investment. Well, the next area that I focus on is called Forward in Faith. It's our opportunity to come alongside ministries through a 3-year stewardship strategy to help churches raise significant capital dollars, fundraising dollars, building fund dollars, maybe ministry-changing dollars to help them take their ministry forward in momentum for ministry impact and for even facility expansion or enhancement if needed. The ideal of capital campaigns is not a 20th or 21st century concept. It's a biblical-based concept. Moses had to raise money for the Wilderness Tabernacle. David raised the money that would later be known as Solomon's Temple. Zerubbabel, coming out of captivity, needed funding to be able to restore or rebuild the destroyed temple. And Nehemiah needed financial support to be able to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem. Each of them were involved in some aspect of fundraising. What you will discover about most other capital stewardship companies is they focus on the second one, Solomon's Temple, and David's process of raising money. And while that is a good model, what we focus on are all 4 of these experiences. We talk about what did Moses do that made his fundraising effective, what did David do that made his fundraising effective, what did Zerubbabel do that made his funding process effective, and what did Zerubbabel do to make his project achievable. We blend all 4, whereas most other agencies only focus on David's model alone. One of the things that's interesting to me is sometimes people say, well, I don't know if we can raise money in this economic environment. But when you look back to these 4 examples, 3 out of the 4 times that there was a construction project, there was 100% unemployment among the children of Israel. 100%, not 10% or 15% unemployment, but 100% unemployment. When the children of Israel came out of wilderness, out of Egypt and entered into the wilderness, none of them had jobs. They were people in transit headed for a promised land. Under Zerubbabel's leadership, these people were coming out of 70 years of slavery and bondage in Babylon, and none of them had their businesses reestablished. No crops had been planted. They were brand new, coming out of slavery, no jobs, no money, but yet God funded that process for them. And in Nehemiah's case, here's a guy who's just rallying a group of people to go forth and rebuild the walls, but all of these people are also captives of the Babylonian regime. And so 100% unemployment 3 out of the 4 times. That's why we believe that you can raise money in any economic environment if you understand momentum and vision casting and you have an effective strategy like we offer to ministries to be able to accomplish those goals and objectives. In fact, one of the things we discovered out of all 4 of these models is this simple truth, that God revealed to us that before there's ever a vision, there is already provision in place. The word pro, P-R-O, means before the vision. And before the vision that God has, it's ever birthed in the heart of a leader, God has already put in place the funding to make that vision possible. Let me illustrate that for you. When God spoke to Moses about the wilderness tabernacle and Moses comes down from the mountain and says, God, that's an absolutely wonderful idea. I'm excited about building this project for you. And then he says to God, but tell me, how are we going to raise the funds, or where are we going to get the products for this? And God doesn't look back at Moses and kind of scratch his head and say, wow, Moses, that's a good idea. I don't know. I haven't got that far. I don't know where the money's going to come from. We know the truth. Before the children of Israel ever left Egypt, God had given them a plan to spoil the Egyptians of their silver and of their gold and of their cloth and materials, to bring them into the wilderness, not so they'd have merchandise to barter in the wilderness, but because they would have these resources available when Moses would hear the vision from God and say, I need resources to build this temple. They would bring their gold and their silver and their garments and their materials and say, wow, God already had this in our backpacks and on our mules, so we're ready to go. God put the provision before he gave Moses the vision. Before God gave the vision to David to build Solomon's temple, he had raised up that nation. David started with 400 men in a cave that were in debt, in distress, and discontent. These guys were up to their eyebrows in debt, couldn't pay their bills, and they were hiding from the creditors. But David took those 400 men, turned them around to become a mighty army for God, ultimately raised up 1 million warriors in the nation. And because they were employed in the battles and the skills of war, all the infrastructure to support war, the making of chariots, the making of armor and tools, this society of people were experiencing high employment. And so the funding or the resources were in place when David raised the money for Solomon's temple. In Zerubbabel's case, God spoke to a Persian king, an unbeliever, and he spoke to that king in such a way that he arranged for the financing of the reconstruction of the temple. We believe that in our approach that not only can we talk about how God has put money in the hands of the people in your church, but there are people who are what we will call friends of your ministry that may not even be saved. But maybe they have somebody that comes to your church. We had a man that because his sister had been saved and delivered from drug addiction and went to that church, even though he never went to church, he donated significant amount of time and resources to help that church expand its capacity and ministry because he appreciated what they did for his sister. Same thing happens. We find the unsaved people who want to donate to your cause as well. And in the case of Nehemiah, he presented his cause before the king, and the king gave him letters that was going to be good for stone and timber, the materials that he was going to need to rebuild the walls. That's called gift in kind, and we work significantly in partnership with the Ministry of Construction and with the construction team to help you get maximum donations of materials and time and labor so you can reduce the cost of your project. By the way, the best money to raise is the money that you don't have to raise. If you can get somebody to donate the material or donate the time, then you don't have to raise that money. That is a huge, huge bargain for you, and we help make that possible through Forward in Faith as well. Through our process, we can help churches raise between 1.5 and 3 times their annual church income over a 3-year period of time. So if a church had, let's say, $500,000 worth of annual income, we would be able to help that church raise between $750,000 and $1.5 million over 3 years in addition to their current budget. In fact, in most cases, we actually help churches increase their tithe and offerings because of our stewardship teaching that elevates people's understanding of that they should be a tither and that they should also give to the building project over and above that. Churches that do self-fundraising, a lot of times churches say, well, we can just save that money that we're going to pay a consultant, and we can just, show the pictures of our building that we're wanting to build or what we're wanting to enhance, and we'll just raise the money. And sometimes they put up a thermometer, they put some kind of a gauge or a reporting system, and they ask people to give. On average, churches that raise money themselves typically only raise about a quarter to one time their annual giving over a 3-year period of time. So basically, they're leaving money on the table, money that they're not raising because they don't have the skills, they don't have the ideas, they don't have the wherewithal. Here's a perfect example. And I'm from Oklahoma, so the Oklahoma Sooners are a big part of our structure and our emphasis of life here. So let me borrow a page from the Oklahoma Sooners recently. Oklahoma Sooners have one of the most well-rated quarterbacks in Landry Jones. He's expected to be a first-round draft pick at the next draft when he goes up. Landry Jones is a prolific passer and an effective strategist on the field. And he does a great job of bringing it from his own 20-yard line down to the opponent's 20-yard line. But he struggles when he gets to the opponent's 20-yard line from getting the ball into the end zone. And the reason why is because his greatest gift is passing, but he's not as good at handoffs or he's not a great runner. And so when he gets to that red zone, he just can't always get the ball in because the field is so much shorter, he doesn't have the range of passing options that he has when the ball is on his own 20 or 30. So they've started bringing in a gentleman who was actually a fullback who played quarterback in high school, and Mr. Bell, and they bring him in on the red zone, and he has the ability to pass, throw, run, whatever he wants to do. He can hand it off. He can block. He's just a multi-use player. He doesn't do good at his own 20-yard line. He doesn't seem to do good on that long open stretch yet, but he does really good in the red zone. And more touchdowns are scored by Bell in the red zone than by Landry, the #1 rated quarterback, even though he's great as a passer. So what I'm saying to you is a lot of times pastors can do really good about getting their vision and getting their drawings and casting their vision and getting it to the 20-yard line, to the red zone, but they're not always the best at getting it punched into the end zone. Because when you step up and have to invite people to give significant amount of money, sometimes pastors feel a little uncomfortable with that. They shy away. Some of the things that they did to bring the church to this point are not the same set of skills that they're going to need to get that ball in the end zone. So we come in and help you achieve that through our strategies and through our ideas and resources. The reality is people think they're saving money by not hiring an outside consultant when in most cases they cost themselves money. Let's say you're a church of $500,000 income, and let's say you did the max and you raised another $500,000 over a 3 years period of time. So that's about the best that most people can do on a self-fundraising. But if we had become your partner, we would have probably helped you raise around $1.5 to $2 million in that process, so you're leaving $500,000 to $1 million on the table. So we want to come in and help you. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend, $30,000, $40,000 for a consultant if they knew it was going to bring them an extra $500,000 or $1 million in their fundraising efforts? We use a very exclusive piece called Hearing from God. This is the cornerstone of our program. It's very powerful. We don't go into homes and put cards on the table and ask people to fill them out and pressure them to give. We don't have high-pressure lunches with key donors in your church. We believe that if we can bring people into hearing from God for themselves and cultivating that sensitivity to the vision, that they'll give as God directs them, not as we try to pressure them. We have a campaign journal that we take people through, and it's a devotional series along with the sermons and with all the other components of our campaign. They work together to create a synergy that allows people to hear from God for themselves and really stretches their faith to be able to give more. And we even give them creative ways to generate money that they had not anticipated. See, most capital campaigns are looking at the people's bank account and at their checkbook, and they're saying, how much money can we get out of them? What we're doing is not only saying, okay, they probably have some money on the side, they maybe have some money out of their paycheck that they can donate, but what if we could help them generate or find unexpected income and help them strengthen their resources or their assets to give out of that in a greater way? So we come with those kinds of income generating ideas or unexpected income solutions that people had never anticipated. We have a holistic approach, so we're not just a fundraising agency. Our goal is to help your entire ministry get stronger. We want your tithes and offerings to increase while we're raising money for your building campaign. We want your attendance to increase because we have components that involve the stewardship of relationships, making people better inviters, bringers, and includers to your church. We want to help you increase the level of volunteers in your church. We want to get more people rolling up their sleeves and getting involved in ministry because ownership of ministry is critical to getting partnership in ministry. So ownership and partnership work hand in hand together. There are 7 basic goals that we have in in Forward in Faith in our Momentum campaign, and some of them I've already alluded to, so I won't take a lot of additional time. We have, first of all, one of the most effective vision casting tools in a capital campaign. I'm not going to play this entire video for you today, but this video is one of the tools that we use to help cast vision for your church. We actually send a video production team to your campus for a weekend, do interviews, learn about your vision, and create a mini movie that's 8 to 12 minutes long that your church can use not only in the capital campaign, but they can also use it as an outreach tool. They can use it as an assimilation tool to keep people connected to your ministry, and they can use it in really several different ways, even on your website, to attract more people to your vision as well. We also use the Hearing from God process. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's a devotional guide, similar to the 40 Days of Purpose, some of the other programs that you're familiar with, but this is strategically written and effectively proven to connect to the sermon themes and to all the other components that we're doing, small group ministries, if you have them, blending all those areas together to deepen the spiritual connectivity and commitment of the people. We're going to increase that mobilization and volunteerism. We had a church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 2,000 people, that when we talked about member mobilization, they said, we've got it covered. We know how to get people involved. We have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. And we said, great. We'd like to find out if our system would even enhance that in a church that has a great engagement process. Would you still let us use our component in the capital campaign? They agreed, and that church of 2,000 actually gained 400 new ministry volunteers as a result of our process. We're going to maximize your giving potential. Now, again, not only for the capital campaign, but we're going to help your people understand stewardship better so that the people that have been just giving in the offering a little here, a little there, are actually going to understand the value of tithing and giving 10% and more as the Lord enables them. We're going to increase your evangelistic impact. We're going to help people take the gospel in a non-threatening way. We're not going to give them a megaphone and stand them on a street corner and tell them to preach the gospel and be a Bible thumper, but we're going to show them how to create natural webs of invitation that causes more people to come to the church, to hear about Christ, to respond to the gospel, and to become connected to your ministry. Our campaign doesn't just focus on adults. We engage the children as well. 85% of people who give to the church today as adults learned how to give as a child. We believe it's important to teach the children today about stewardship because your adults today, they may be funding your current project, but the children today are going to fund future projects in your ministry. So we need to start early teaching and training them so that whether you're around 20 or 30 years from now, when these kids are having jobs at 20 years of age and entering the marketplace, they'll understand that they were a part of this capital campaign and this building project, and they'll want to be a part of the next one. The same applies to our teens. We live in a very narcissistic society in which it's all about me in a team culture. We're going to actually teach them the value of something bigger than themselves, teach them about the rewards and the joy of giving, how that they can make a difference, impact other people's lives. And many of them already have jobs. And we're going to teach them how that they can maybe take an hour a week of their wages and donate it to the building campaign as their investment, or maybe work for 2 or 3 hours. Or if they have babysitting jobs, donate a babysitting job or a lawn mowing responsibility, something that they can give so that they can learn this process, again, because the teens and the children of today may not fund this project significantly, but they will fund your future projects. Our investment is very simple. We have a flat fee structure. The brochures that we provide will be given to you that will show you that depending on the level of service that you want, our fees are the same. All of our fees include all of our travel expenses for the consultant to come, for the multiple visits designated, to do training, consulting, and to assist you in reaching your goals and your objectives. There's basically two levels. One is called the core campaign. That does not have the vision casting video in it. The other is called the comprehensive campaign. It includes the video. It includes additional training visits and help with follow-through. And it also provides greater follow-up resources in which we give 3 years of resources for growth and expansion. We offer a variety of options, even scholarship programs for churches that are smaller. It's a set fee. Most agencies are going to come in and ask you, what size of budget do you have? How much do you think you're going to raise? And they're going to calculate a percentage of your fundraising capacity, and that's the fee they're going to charge you. We charge a flat fee based on which level of service do you want. The national average by national companies today is $36,000 to $72,000, and none of them offer a vision casting video. If you chose our top of the line, our comprehensive campaign, it's $36,000, but it includes not only great visits, additional resources for 3 years and training and support, but it also includes a custom vision casting video that I spoke about a moment ago that helps you raise more money, and that video is going to be used to attract new people as an outreach tool, connect new people that come to visit your church, use on your website, and even help you in the construction phase to solicit the donations of skills, time, and labor so you can reduce the cost of your project. Here's just a little simple formula. If you have church income of $100,000, then we would project that we could help you raise between $150,000 to $300,000. If you have a church that has $1 million worth of income, we could help you raise between $1.5 to $3 million, all for a $36,000 investment in our comprehensive campaign. Now just ask yourself the question, how many times would you be willing to write a $36,000 check if you knew that you could produce the results that I've illustrated on the screen? That for a church of $1 million in income, or even $500,000 or $250,000 worth of income, for a $36,000 investment, we could help you raise between $375,000 all the way to $3 million for that investment. We believe it's a compelling reality. Let me add one more thing. You're just hearing this on a video presentation, but I'm available to come and meet with your church leadership and present in greater detail our services for Positioning Your Church and Forward in Faith at no cost to you. So if you're interested in a capital campaign or a combined package of services, then just let us know. Donna Cullen is there to help us. She'd be happy to take down your information and put us in contact with you, either myself or Mike Goldsmith or one of our other consultants. We'd be happy to set up a free, no cost, no obligation appointment to come to your church, meet with your leadership team, share with you in greater detail the services we provide, and give you the opportunity to ask questions and learn more about our process before you make a decision. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have the opportunity to work with you, and I trust that you're having a great seminar. I hope you'll enjoy all that you've taken in and that we have the opportunity to hear from you soon. Thank you,